One of the most common fact patterns we see is the missed or delayed diagnosis of cancer case. What happens in those cases is that somebody had a sign or symptom that should have been followed up on, should have been explored, that would have led to the diagnosis of cancer, but it was missed or not followed up on. And so somebody might have gone months or even years without knowing that they had cancer. When it comes to treating cancer, there's nothing more important than early diagnosis. So the problem you have is that when cancer is not caught or it's delayed, that someone can go from having what would have been treatable and potentially completely curable to something that is now metastatic, incurable, and often terminal. When we use the term delayed diagnosis, we mean that a patient was diagnosed, but the diagnosis didn't happen in a timely fashion. When we say misdiagnosis, what we mean is that the medical provider never made the diagnosis. Perhaps the patient ultimately went for a second opinion to somebody else, and that person then diagnosed them. The two most common situations we see that give rise to a missed or delayed diagnosis of cancer are where a patient has signs or symptoms that are suggestive of potential cancer and they're not followed up on. So the doctor doesn't order the right lab work or the doctor doesn't order the right study, and so therefore it goes missed. The second category we see is where the doctor does order the study. So for example, there's blood work done or there's imaging done, and the blood work or the imaging shows something that's concerning for cancer, but it is not followed up on. In many cases involving cancer delays, there's a long period of time that goes between when the doctor should have caught the cancer and when the patient was ultimately diagnosed. Of course, after all, that's what the case is about, the delay. But we have a timeline for bringing cases. In the state of Maine, for example, it's a 3-year statute of limitation. In a delayed diagnosis of cancer case, it's even more important that you come to your lawyer as soon as you think you might have a case, because usually there has been a delay, and if the delay goes on too long, then you may be past the statute of limitations for bringing the case itself. We have extensive experience handling cases of misdiagnosed cancer, and we've handled all types of cases. The principle is always the same though. Number one, when should the diagnosis have been made? Number two, if the diagnosis had been made at that time, would the patient have had a better outcome and a better chance of survival than when the diagnosis was actually made? If someone has suffered a missed or delayed diagnosis of cancer, the damages run the gamut from a wrongful death case where somebody dies of a cancer, or somebody who's had to live with the aftermath of having to treat with chemotherapy or radiation therapy, where perhaps a simple excision would have cured them had the cancer been caught sooner. Our firm is different from others when it comes to cases involving delayed diagnosis of cancer because number one, we have extensive experience handling those cases. We've seen it all more than once. We have experience working with the best experts in the country in all of the different subspecialties involved in a delayed diagnosis of cancer case. So when we do the initial consultation in a delayed diagnosis of cancer case, we want to go through your medical history in precise detail. We want to understand, when did you first have signs or symptoms that might have been associated with the cancer? Did you go to your primary care doc? Did you go to walk-in clinics? Did you go to the hospital emergency department? And when you went, did they do any testing? Did they order blood work? Did they order imaging studies? If they did imaging studies, what did those imaging studies show? So we can sort through a lot of the issues in the initial phone call. And then if we decide based on that call that we need to look at it more carefully, the next step is that we need to get all the medical records, we need to get all the imaging studies, we need to review them carefully and ultimately consult with experts.